Hi everybody, Bill 1911 here. Today we're going to look at an actual Soviet Cold War relic. This is the Tokarev model CZ-52. This was one of the primary military sidearms carried by Soviet soldiers back in the day. It's actually an excellent little gun. A lot of the time when we're dealing with Soviet guns, they tend to be the essence of simplicity, and this one is no exception. It's very simple. It accomplishes certain tasks in a slightly different way, which we'll show you when we take the gun apart. Now I have modified this pistol in that I put a handle right here on the side of it so that I could control the slide lock. This was designed so that the only way the slide locked back was if you had an empty magazine in it. Alright? Well, I've never liked that feature. I like to be able to lock that slide back whenever I please. So I put this button on it with my thumb where I could simply push it up and lock the slide open. Alright? And now that we've got it open, we are going to, as always, verify that there is no ammunition in the gun. We're also going to verify that there is no ammunition present in the work area. It's a simple precaution. It's about safety, and it's real easy to do. We don't have to have ammunition present in the work area, so I choose to get it out of there. So, with that in mind, there are a couple other things that I'd like to tell you about this gun that are pretty important. Ammunition, okay? If we look at the velocity of a .357 Magnum, it pushes about 1,400 feet per second at the top end. This guy here, with the 7.62 by 25 round in it, pushes 1,700 feet per second. It is an extremely fast little round. It's a bottlenecked cartridge, but it's got a tremendous amount of velocity. It's one of those rounds that it's no joke. It's a serious round. It's small. It's .30 caliber, but it's got an awful lot of punch. So one of the other things that's not well known about these is right here on the slide. There's no way you'll see it. It's just too small to get it in the camera. There's a little dimple that's put into the top of the slide with a center punch. They put one dimple for an extremely accurate gun, one that shoots really well. They put 6 dimples for ones that don't shoot so well. This one is a 1, so it's a really good gun. It shoots really, really well. So, the other thing I want to tell you about the ammunition for this gun is most of what you can find for this is produced in China, and it's produced very cheaply. They use corrosive primers and corrosive powders. Also, it's a copper washed steel case. You can buy brass cases for this and reload your own ammunition. It is available. There is a company called Starline that makes them, at least they used to. I bought a couple hundred cases for this, and I've been reloading them for a long time whenever I shoot it. So it's really a good gun, but if you're going to use that cheap ammunition that's corrosive, you're going to want to clean this thing every single time you take it out and shoot it. Do not leave that corrosive primer and corrosive powder residue in the barrel, because it will literally eat the barrel right out of the inside of this gun. So, with that in mind, let's get down to taking this neat little gun apart. Okay, so to get it apart, right here is the release mechanism. We're going to pull it straight down. Alright, now you need to push the barrel and slide back just a little bit to take the pressure off of it. So we're going to grab it like this, we're going to shove it back just a little bit, take our finger and our thumb, and we're going to push that down and then release. Once it releases, it just drops right off the gun. That's simple. Okay, real easy to take this one apart. So, If you look, this release is a kind of a ledge right there that pulls down out of the way so that the slide can move a little bit further forward and then come right up off the rail. Okay? So, as far as getting the barrel out of this thing, it's not a hard thing as far as method, but it's kind of a headache because that spring is quite strong, and the way you have to get it out is you have to take some kind of a tool and put it right down here inside this round hole. Right in here, okay? And then you're going to push it forward, okay, toward the front of the gun. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to pin this thing down with our hand, okay, and push the whole thing forward with our thumb. Now, what's going to happen is that there are two rollers right here and right here. Once this locking mechanism gets far enough forward, those two rollers are going to fall out of the way and allow the barrel to go forward, okay? So it's a bit difficult to manipulate, but you can do it. Stick your screwdriver in the hole, push it forward. Once it reaches a certain point, the barrel will then lift up and come out, just like that. Like I said, it's kind of a pain in the neck. It's kind of a difficult thing to do. Now I'm going to refocus the light and do that again so maybe you can see it a little bit better. I kind of feel like it was in shadow that time, so give me just a second and I'm going to put it back together and do that again. Alright, get the light down here. So we're going to push it forward. Now putting it back together, this dog again has to be all the way forward, okay, and the barrel back, otherwise you're not going to get it back together. So we need to push it up and push the barrel back and drop it in just like that. Like I said, it's kind of a pain. Alright, so once again, to take it apart, we're going to stick that screwdriver in it. We're going to push the whole thing forward and it'll lift up and out of place, just like that. Once it's apart to this point, the spring slides right off the end. Now this part does not come apart easily. So I'm going to recommend that you really don't take it apart. There's really no reason to. You can get it clean enough and oiled up enough without taking it apart. There is a product called gun scrubber, which for this gun I would recommend it because taking this pin right here and driving it out through the other side is kind of a headache. Okay, it's a very, very tight fit pin in there, and so I'm going to recommend leaving that one alone. Usually I say if you want to take it apart, but this one I'm going to recommend leave it alone. So this is how you get it taken down to where you can clean it. So like always, we're going to use our jag and our cleaning rod. Now this particular gun, as I said, is 30 caliber. So we're going to get in our little kit and get out our 30 caliber jag. And it's right here. Okay. So, like always, you're going to need a bore cleaning solvent. Okay. I use this stuff because it was inexpensive, but any bore cleaning solvent will do the trick. Also, you're going to need a gun cleaning oil. I always recommend, or not a gun cleaning oil, a gun oil, one that's specifically formulated for guns. I always recommend that because you never know how oils are going to affect synthetic parts, such as the handles on this. Now this shouldn't be a problem. These handles are made out of a material called bakelite, and I don't think that it's going to have any trouble with oil at all. So with that in mind, we are going to take those handle grips off, by the way. I'm going to show you that because it's kind of a neat feature. But I did want to show you also just how simple this gun is, okay? There's just not much to it. They have a real economy with everything doubles up. The spring that runs the hammer, okay, that pushes the strut rod up to move that hammer forward, also controls the magazine release, okay? So double duty on that spring. There are a couple other springs that have double duty. The slide lock and the safety both are on the same spring. It's one spring, does both jobs. So Tokarev did things very, very simple in all the stuff they did. So now it does have some of the hallmarks of Soviet guns, and that is there are places where you can actually still see the machining marks where they didn't really worry too much about cleaning it up because they were cranking these things out by the millions. I mean, they really made a lot of them. And so they didn't worry on the inside about how it looked. They worried about how it functioned. So, and that's very typical of Soviet-made guns. All right, so tell you what, let's go ahead and take those handle grips off. I'll show you that. It's kind of neat the way they do it. They don't use screws to hold the handles on. They use this clip. Okay, you stick your screwdriver under, you push it back a little bit on one side so it's out of the locking groove. You kind of got to hold it in place because it wants to snap back on you. And you get on the other side and you pick this side out, push it back, and once you've got it out of that groove, you just pull that spring right off the back. That's it. Now these grips are ready to come off. You pick them up in the back and pull them backward. There's a little hook that's all along the front edge of this that hooks under the frame, okay, that holds the front side of that grip in place, okay? And both grips are the same. They come off the same way. But there you can see how simple this thing is. There just isn't much in it. It's just everything is simplicity with Tokarev. All right. Over here, one spring operates the safety and the slide lock. So everything is real simple here. All right. So with that, we're going to clean things up. I think I'm going to leave these off and clean the frame underneath them. So let's go ahead and get started cleaning. All right, now I'm going to run out of patches, and I know I am, so I'm going to get some more right now before we start this. All right, so cleaning patches. I like to use a double nap flannel patch. All right, that means it's fuzzy on both sides of the patch, okay? Single nap flannel only has the fuzzy on one side of the patch, okay? So I like the double nap flannel because I can use one side of it, turn it inside out, and use it again. On some of these Russian guns, some of them, these machine marks inside the gun are so incredibly rough that they will literally pull the fibers out of this flannel patch. So sometimes if you're working with some of these Russian guns, sometimes you're better off using something like a t-shirt material as a patch. It's up to you. This particular gun is smooth enough that I haven't had any problem with pulling the fibers out of these flannel patches. So I'm going to go ahead and use them. Okay, so like always, we're going to wet a patch and start cleaning things up. Okay, when you do springs, wet your patch, fold it diagonally, and simply slip it in between the windings like this, okay? Then pull the two ends together. What that does is it wraps that cloth all the way around the wire of the spring, and at that point, you simply crank it through like it's a big screw, and that's going to clean all the powder residue and carbon off the outside of that spring. All right, so we're going to keep cranking until we get it all the way done. That's it. So that spring is clean. And as you can see, when I unfold this, it does get quite a bit of dirt off of that spring. So now I'm going to use the other side, the reverse side, and I'm just going to start wiping things down and getting residue off the outside of these parts. Now, sometimes some of this stuff is a little hard to get off, so it may take you a little bit to get it loose. And you may want to use a cleaning brush in some of these tighter little areas here, okay? Okay, now these rollers don't just fall out, so you don't have to worry about that. They stay in pretty well. The only way to really get them out is to take this piece all the way, well, remove this pin, take this locking piece out, and then slide them in and pull them out. Slide the rollers into the center and pull them out. So they're not going to fall out on you. You don't have to worry about that. Alright. So once we've got the outside of it wiped down real good, we're going to move on to the next part. Now there's a lot of material in here on the frame that I think I want to try and get some of it off. What that is it's a substance called cosmoline, which was a preservative so that these guns could be shipped, and even if they got wet, it wouldn't rust them out. So we're going to keep going with that and get it cleaned up best we can. Okay. Pretty much everybody in the Cold War and World War II era used cosmoline as a preservative to protect their guns when they shipped them. You will also find, especially on German guns, Germans were kind of fanatical about records, and you'll find what they call proof marks on some of these guns. And you might find an X that means it visited one country, or a P, it visited another country like Poland, or there's all kinds of different stars and things like that that you'll find on these older World War II and Cold War relic pieces. These things can help you to identify specifically where a gun had service, okay? So that's just a little food for thought, little information. And I don't know if you can see this, but none of the nap is coming out of this patch. So this gun is actually fairly smooth as far as Soviet guns are concerned. Some of these things are a train wreck. In another video, I do a Makarov pistol, and that thing is so horrendously rough inside. Man, half the patch stayed in the gun, you know, so you kind of have to use a t-shirt material on that. Alright, so we're just going to kind of continue just cleaning it all up. Now, there are a couple of areas on this gun where the Soviets actually took the time to do things right. Back here on this grip, sometimes, again, I'll go back to that Soviet Makarov. That thing has such sharp corners on here, it can hurt your hands just to grip it and pull the slide back, okay? This one is pretty smooth. There's no real sharp corners on it. So that's kind of exceptional. And I think a lot of that has to do with where it was manufactured. This one was done in Czechoslovakia. So let's get another patch and continue on our way here. All right. Now remember, since that, wow, that was really dirty in there, wasn't it? Since that powder and primer that they use is corrosive, you want to make sure you get that out of there. Now, what I've shot in this gun is not that corrosive ammunition. I try to stay away from that stuff. I also don't like the idea of putting a steel case down into my chamber and scratching the heck out of the inside of the chamber. I don't like it. So I try to stick with better quality ammunition, and I can make my own ammunition with a lot better quality than what I can buy off the Chinese market. I mean, it shoots with that Chinese ammunition. It's not like like you can't shoot it, but you just really have to immediately pay attention to getting that gun clean, because otherwise it's going to be a rust bucket in no time flat. I mean, that stuff is really bad as far as being dirty is concerned. Alright, so I think we've got things wet up pretty good here. I think I'm going to use my cleaning brush to get into these little grooves a little better. Now, with a cleaning brush, it doesn't have to be a store-bought cleaning brush. You can do this with an old toothbrush and get it nice and clean. Okay, so you don't have to spend a lot of money on these things to get the job done. The one thing that's very nice about these cleaning brushes is, if you look, one end has a very narrow set of bristles, okay, and the other one has a little wider one. Those narrow bristles are very good for getting down into small locations and getting the junk out. So they can be really nice to have. Alright, so that's moving freely. That's good. Okay, so we've got our slide pretty well cleaned up. Our frame's been wiped down. Magazine looks pretty good. I don't think I'm going to worry too much with this today. These magazines can be disassembled. The way you take them apart is that the spring sticks out right here on the bottom. You have to push that down and move the floor plate forward like that to get it off, okay? You slide it all the way out and then everything comes out of the inside. I'm not going to do that with this one. Okay, and we get our spring back up into place and we're set. Okay. So, now I'm going to take my rag and I'm going to start wiping up all the excess material that's on the outside of this gun. Okay. Now I still have to brush the inner workings on the frame, but that got a lot of that stuff out from between the grip and the frame. So remember, this gun, they started making these things, they call it the CZ52 for a reason. So these have been around for a long time. I don't recall off the top of my head exactly when this gun was originally designed. I want to think it was originally designed back in the 40s and went into service in 52, I think. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I think is the case. Okay, so now we've got the outside cleaned up a little bit so it's not slippery to hang on to. We're going to do the same with the slide. Okay, it looks fairly good. Alright, so now we're going to clean the bore, which is very likely pretty dirty. Had this thing out not too long ago, and I put a good number of rounds through it. And it looks like it's got a good bit of junk up in that barrel, so I wanted to show you some things about the cleaning jag. I like to use the cleaning jag. I rarely use a bore brush. On occasion I do, but I might on this one because it looks pretty bad in there. But if you look, there's a little metal tip right here on the end of this jag. And what we do is we stab that tip through the patch, and that holds it in place on our cleaning jag. So first thing we need to do is get the inside of that barrel wet with our solvent. Okay, so we're going to mount it on the rod. Simply stab it through like that. Okay, you see it stabbed through there. All right, and now we're going to just stick it up through that barrel. Okay, well, we got some green stuff out of it and some black stuff out of it. And it immediately looks a lot better than it did. That's good. So it wasn't quite as dirty as I thought it was. And we're going to go this way. Now that jag, as you can see, is a very tight fit through that barrel. It does not want to go easily. But you can also see that it took a lot out of the inside of that barrel. Okay, and that's what we want. We want to get it all cleaned out. And that barrel actually looks excellent in there already, with just 2 passes through it. So I'm going to go ahead now and put a dry patch through it and clean some of that excess material out. Same thing, we're going to mount the patch and then go through that barrel on the inside again. Now right here, this plastic piece, this cone is to protect you from banging your rod against the rifling inside the barrel. So we're going to use that just like that. Just push it down in, hold it, and then we're going to work our patch through. Okay. And we got a lot of material out, so that's good. Now I'm going to show you a trick on how to look down your barrel and be able to see real clearly. So what I'm first going to do is show you inside that barrel. It's kind of dark in there, so we take our patch and we literally just reflect the light up through that barrel, and you can see a lot better that way. Okay, so now I'm going to inspect it. Alright, I still see some dirt in there, so we're going to run it around a couple more times, clean it a couple more times. I think I might go ahead and use the bore brush this time. And let's get the 30 caliber one out. That might be 270. Yep, that's the wrong brush. So let's get the correct one. Okay, this is 30 caliber here. Alright, so we're going to mount our brush. Now, this is a brand new brush. It's never been used before, so I'm going to go ahead and literally dip it right into my can of solvent. Okay, and this is going to get solvent on my brush. Okay, after you've used a brush, don't put it back in your can because you're going to contaminate your solvent. We're going to pull it back and forth through there a few times and get that barrel clean. All right. Now, unfortunately, when I used that brush, as I was pulling it out, it spattered material all over the outside of the gun again, so I got to clean the gun up again. Ah, darn it. Well, that's okay. Not the end of the world. Alright, so we're going to inspect our bore again. And now it looks nice and clean in there. That is so much better. Alright. So like I said, I don't always use the bore brush, but in this particular case, as filthy as it was, I felt it needed it. Okay? Normally I think the Jag does a better job, but in this case, it did not. So, the brush it is. Now the brush is a little abrasive on the inside of the barrel. But in truth, you'd have to brush that thing half to death to really cause any damage. One thing that needs to be said is they make these brushes in stainless steel. Now those stainless steel brushes, those are kind of hard on the bore. So they work very well, but they're a lot stiffer than these bronze ones. You want your brush to be made out of a material that's softer than the steel in the barrel. Well, as you can see, a whole bunch more junk came out of that barrel that time, so I'm glad we used the brush on it. Alright, now we're going to inspect again. Clean as a whistle. Looks really, really good. Alright, so with that in mind, we can start the oiling process and start putting this gun back together. So I'm going to make sure things are dry first. Alright, so I think I'm going to start by putting an oily patch down the bore of this pistol because I don't want to forget to do it. So we're just going to mount a clean patch and we're going to start putting oil on it like this. And we're going to get that pad nice and oily. And we're going to push it right down that barrel. And like I said, that Jag is a very tight fit, so it takes a bit to get it through. Okay. So, now after you've oiled it, if you look down that barrel, you're going to see that there's a nice shiny sheen on the inside of that barrel, and that's what you want. You want that barrel to have a coating of oil on it, and it looks good. Alright, so the barrel is, well, it's getting pretty close to done. Now I do want to take my brush in here a little bit. Make sure there's nothing in there that I didn't get out. I really enjoy some of these old Cold War era guns. You see things, they're made so differently back then than they are now. Like the way the delay works on this barrel. The whole barrel comes back with the slide for just that little bit of time until those two rollers can drop in, and then the slide comes back by itself. But until that point, the slide is actually locked to the barrel, so the two of them come backward together for maybe a quarter of an inch, Okay? Well, maybe 3/8 of an inch from here to here, that long. That's how much of a delay there is in unlocking that breech. This operating system goes by, well, it goes by a bunch of different names. In my part of the country, a lot of people like to call it a delayed blowback system. Okay? The actual technical name is locked breech short recoil. But delayed blowback is fine. It still describes the action pretty well. So, and I know some people may argue with that, but that's okay. We all have our opinions. So, when we see contact points where pieces of metal are going to rub together, we want to put oil in those locations. It prevents parts from wearing out. Alright, so we're going to come up here and we're going to run that right up that strut rod and into its point of origin. Okay. And contact points for springs. We don't want the end of the spring to break off. Any place where you see a pin going through another piece of metal, that hinge point needs a little bit of oil. Okay, so we're looking good here. Right over here is your sear. Okay, this is what your trigger actually pulls when it drops the hammer. Okay. And like I said, there's just not that much to this gun that you have to do. It's very, very simple. Now, always, on any of these release mechanisms, make certain that you oil them, because if you do not and they freeze up, you'll never get the gun apart again. You're really going to have a hard time with it. So, always make sure that you oil those points, those release mechanisms. Alright, so now that we've got oil in it, we're going to put the grips back on. Like I said, simple process. They just hook on the front edge, okay, drop in on the back edge, and then we take this spring and we put it back in place. Just like that. That's got the handle put back together. No screws, no muss, no fuss, really easy. Okay? So, we're going to oil our spring, our recoil spring, in the same way that we cleaned it. We're going to take a patch, okay, we're going to fold it diagonal and we're going to get some oil on it. Okay, we're going to oil this up real good. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to slip it between the windings, pull the ends together so it's wrapped all the way around the wire, and then we're going to crank it through like a screw. Very simple process, but it does a good job. Thoroughly coats the spring. And it doesn't leave a lot of excess oil on it to work its way through the gun and make the gun slippery. So once we've got that done, now I'm going to go ahead and take this same patch with the oil on it, and I'm going to wipe oil on the outside of the barrel as well. Okay, we definitely want that oil, and it doesn't look like I got enough on there to do much, and it doesn't feel very slippery, so I'm going to go ahead and add some with my fingers here. Put a little bit of oil on it. Okay, and we're going to rub it all over it. Okay, in all of these parts where they come together, we're going to put some oil. The rollers need to be oiled. Okay, then your tracks need to be oiled. Okay, so that's got our recoil mechanism oiled up. Okay, our recoil spring oiled up, our barrel oiled up. Okay, so that part's pretty well ready to go back together. We've oiled the frame. The only thing left is to oil the little pieces on the slide. Now I like to run a little bit of oil around where the firing pin comes through, and that's this button right here in the back of the slide. Okay, now that'll actually work its way through the spring. And the other thing I always want to make sure I do is oil the extractor. Now this gun is pretty old, so it's getting to where it's not that easy to get parts for, so we want to make sure that we don't have failures on things like extractors and things like that, because they may be hard to come by. Now, we do need to oil the slide rails. Okay, now you can see a little bit of a shine on these parts here. Well, that means it's rubbing together against other metal parts, and that means we need to lubricate that area of the gun. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Put a few drops of oil on it. Get in there, you. Now, I got a little bit of excess on the outside of the gun, so I'm just going to clean that up. Alright. Put a little bit back on here that I just wiped off. Okay. And we're going to go to the other side and do the same thing. Now you're going to see some contact points inside the gun as well, where you're seeing the metal is shiny, and we're going to put oil on those places as well. Any place where you see the finish is rubbed off and it's shiny, that's where you want to put your oil. So now we're going to reassemble the slide just like we took it apart. It's the inverse operation. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of shove it forward like that and kind of hook it in place. Okay, you'll see the two rounded cutouts right here and here. That's what the rollers fit into. But you're also going to see a squared cutout right here. This is where the barrel comes out on disassembly. So we're going to, just so we've got a good handle on it, we're just going to kind of push the whole thing together and let that lock into place and temporarily hold itself until we can get a good hold on this thing with our screwdriver. Now you're going to have to hold the barrel back, otherwise this locking dog is not going to go forward and allow those rollers to pop inward. So I'm going to point the nose of it down, put my screwdriver in it, and pull it forward, and as it comes forward you see those two rollers drop into place. Well, now we're going to pull the slide back until it drops in, and then we release, and we've got it. That's it. That's all there is to it. Okay, so I see a couple more shiny spots inside the slide, and I'm going to put some oil on them. Okay, maybe run a little oil in those rails where the barrel works back and forth. Okay, and we're going to put them on those four little lugs that are the slide rails for the slide. Okay, now putting this back together is so darn simple, it's ridiculous. Okay, you can see these two little squared lugs right here, okay, on the slide. They're going to fit through those two little passages here, so you line those up, okay, and it just kind of drops into place. Okay, once you've got it to that point, you simply push the slide straight down and back until you hear it go click, and it doesn't have to move much. That's it. It's reassembled. You're done. Real simple, elegant little gun. It shoots really well. It's a nice little piece. The CZ52, made in Czechoslovakia. Again, this is literally a Cold War relic. It's an interesting little gun. And it really is a good fun gun to shoot too. It shoots well. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. If you found this video to be helpful and informative, don't forget to like us, and please subscribe, and by all means come to visit us at askbill1911.com. Also, I want to talk to you about something that's very important to us, and that's your safety. So please, don't try any of the things you see on our videos until you have thoroughly reviewed and understood our safety procedures. If you're under 18 years of age, do not try any of these topics without the express permission of your parent or guardian. Thank you.